Hey guys, welcome to another episode of LJ's Garage, and behind me is a 2006 Porsche 911 Carrera S, also known as the 997. There's a reason that Porsche has been around and been one of the longest running nameplates in car history, so stay tuned, we're going to talk about why this is an awesome car. So I've always been a fan of Porsches just because their main goal is to have that connection between the driver and the vehicle. And they do just a good job with that. Just overall, great company, great philosophy, and great execution. And the 997, for those of you that don't know, if you've been under a rock or haven't heard anyone talk about this awesome car, it was in production from 2005 all the way to 2012. And then in 2008 or 9, they did a little refresh. So there are minor changes, but nothing major because Porsche takes time to make their changes, and so you'll hear people refer to it as like the 997.1 or the 997.2, but it's still the same 997 overall. This is one of my favorite Porsches. Just super subtle, beautiful looks. It's elegant. There's really not a bad thing that I could say about this car, anything that I personally would change. So I've got to say it's going down in the books as one of my favorite Porsches ever. The biggest thing with a lot of cars is that all the modifications, the aftermarket, the possibilities are endless. I respect the owner of this specific car because he actually made it his mission to keep it a true Porsche experience. So other than these aftermarket wheels, there really isn't a whole lot that's done to this car to take away from that. I don't know about you guys, but I prefer a really nice rear end, and Porsche has done a great job on the rear end of this 997. If you take a look, you can see these swooping, beautiful arches, and it's just got this wide body presence, even though it's not a fully wide bodied car or anything like that. But it's just elegant and curvaceous and nice. Something that I want to point out, because I know a lot of cars have tried to replicate this weird coupe into a hatchback styling that they do back here. It works great on these cars, but many manufacturers that have tried to replicate the same thing, they don't always have success, but you know, I can see why they want to model their cars after this. Overall, I'd say that this car is aging very well. It's like a fine wine or a cheese, but without the stinky odor smell. There's really nothing else to point out on the outside. There are no cool, extravagant features or anything like that, unless you guys really want to see headlight washers. I can show you guys headlight washers if you really want. They're pretty nice. You see this little guy right here? He's one of the headlight washers. Like I said, they make sure that they engineered this car beautifully. So let's take a look. This one's a rear engine sports car. So engine is in the rear. Under the hood is a 3.8 liter flat six that makes 355 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. Since this is a car that you can order from the factory any way, shape, or form that you desire, you get a couple different transmission options. This one's got a 6-speed manual, but you also do get the option of the PDK, which is a dual clutch transmission, or you get the Tiptronic automatic. You don't want that. So stick with the 6-speed manual. For those of you that like your numbers, this thing will do 0 to 60 in about 4.6 seconds. As I was saying earlier, this is a usable sports car, so you do in fact have a front trunk, for those of you that don't know how those two words came to fruition. So I'll just show you guys what we're working with under here. As you can see, there is a good bit of space. I will now demonstrate fitting a person in this trunk. Never mind, not gonna happen. I won't get in there to demonstrate, but I'd say if you have to, you could probably fit one body in there. You just have to, If you guys are on the market for one of these, you'll notice that this does say S. And what does the S give you? It gives you a little bit more power, gives you different exhausts and different wheels, larger wheels at that. I'm not gonna rev this one and demonstrate how it sounds. It's not really loud. It sounds like any other 6-cylinder engine that you can imagine. So we're gonna keep the neighbors away from us today. Taking a look through the interior, you'll notice that it's very Porsche, very nice, and it's aging really well. It doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles, but it doesn't really need that. This is not what this car is designed for. It's to remind you that yes, it's luxurious, but it's also a Porsche. It's meant to be driven. So the owner hasn't made anything crazy, hasn't changed anything radical in here. Backup camera, as well as an aftermarket stereo. And that's about it. You've got sound, you've got air conditioning, you've got cruise control. There really isn't a whole lot more to ask for. There's a lot of things in this car that make a lot of sense, but then there's a few things that make you scratch your head and you're like, I don't really know why they did it that way, but it works. First thing I want to point out is going to be these cup holders. So you push this little button here and then bam, bam. Now you got two cup holders. And if you're wondering, No, I can't fit anything in these tiny cup holders. Well, guess what? They extend out, so they'll fit American-sized drinks. Another cool thing is that these window switches, they're in the direction that the windows open and close, so you just flick up and the windows go up, instead of being like perpendicular in a weird direction that the windows don't even move. For those of you that don't know, this does actually come with back seats. They're for really small people or small children, but option is here nonetheless, tying in with the whole practical, daily, functional car. You do get some upgraded sound because you've got a Bose sound system. It sounds pretty nice. If you're ever driving down the road and you forget that you're in a high performance machine, then you've got this little timer, which is for your laps. And so it's a great reminder of the awesome potential that this car has. You'll never run out of storage in here either, because there's random compartments that you find all over the place to store more things. Take a look at the design of these seats. They've got the Porsche logo stamped in there, and it's just a really nice touch. I found this to be pretty cool. If you look on the fuel gauge right there, it says 2/4 or 4/4. Why don't they simplify their fractions? Does anyone know why this says flip visor over? I just absolutely also love this roof. It's kind of like a suede Alcantara. It's just nice. I can touch this all day. You do have the option to get this with a, I guess you'd call it a sunroof. Fun fact for you guys, your key is actually on the left side. So it takes a lot of getting used to. Unless you're left-handed, then you're probably like, thank God someone's been looking out for me. The first thing I want to talk about is the steering on this. It's excellent, and I know I use that word a lot, but it's the best thing that I could find to describe the driving experience of this Porsche. And I can see why everyone jumps on the 997 bandwagon pretty easily. It's almost like the Miata guys, but in a different sense. In the words of Jeremy Clarkson, he said the Porsche 997 will make love to your fingertips and stir your soul. And I think it just does that. Because you can customize this car from the factory, you can set it up so that it's like a full luxury experience, or you can strip this down and basically have this as a driver-focused Porsche. And this is what this one is set up for. So it's got the PASM, P-A-S-M, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but it's just a driver's car is all I can say. Anyone that tells you to look for one of these with PASM, they know what they're talking about. So that stands for Porsche Active Suspension Management, and it's a system, you push it, it's basically sport mode on any other car, but in a Porsche it's a little different. It's PASM, but it actually does work, and it turns this into from a street car into a more street legal track car, in a sense, not quite to that extreme. What that means is you actually do notice a difference. The suspension tightens, the throttle response changes. There's actually a lot of different things that go on behind the scenes, and all I can tell you is that you notice it, and the car notices it, and it just puts you two that much closer together. So the trade-off to that is that your suspension is pretty rough. And by rough, I mean you feel the entire road. So what the car feels, yeah, you're gonna feel that. But is that a bad thing? It all depends. I mean, you can do some glute exercises to kind of get around the pain in your butt area. It's really funny because when Porsche started off with this car and putting the engine behind the driver and everything, everyone laughed. But look at this car now. It's super successful, and this recipe works. You got rear wheel drive, rear engine, and it just handles like a dream. You know, there's no other way to really keep saying the same thing over and over other than it handles like a dream. This is a really balanced flat six, and by that I mean you've got great weight distribution. The cylinders, they're really smooth whenever they're firing and everything. Just, you don't really hear too much of that motor behind you, but whenever you get into these RPMs and you're actually up into like anything above 4, then the car comes alive, which is great because when you're just street driving and cruising through a city, it feels like any other Honda Civic or just a regular old Accord or something like that, but it's nothing crazy until you get on it, and then you keep those RPMs high and you can have a blast. Once you actually become familiar with the car, you can shift like butter. You're moving through the gears, you're finding the power band, and you're staying right in it, or you're just cruising around trying to get something better than the 17 miles per gallon that this thing gets in the city. After living with this for about a day or so, I can understand why someone would want to daily drive this. It's a lot of fun, but it's really easy to drive considering it's 355 horsepower, so you're not going to blow the doors off of anyone. These performance specs, they're still good, they're still healthy, and even like, you know, the new Supra or something is pretty much neck and neck with this thing. In a nutshell, From the inside, you're driving it and it feels like an everyday car. From the outside, it looks like a beautiful work of art, and everyone else takes note of that, and they expect this performance and this exhilaration and all of these things to be going on. But you could just be sitting right back here listening to your favorite Lil Xan X song and cruising down the street. I don't know if that's one of these modern day rappers or not, but we're just gonna go with that. I wanna take a minute to talk about the brakes on this. They're awesome, and I had the chance to take it through some windy roads, and I know I've read that people say that you don't experience a whole lot of brake fading, and I thought I was pushing the car pretty hard. I wouldn't say track, levels of difficulty, but it was hanging in there. They felt good, felt nice and sharp, and I wasn't afraid. It inspired a lot of confidence. I know it's been said a million times, but this car is light, responsive, does what it can with 355 horsepower. It's fun. It's the true definition of what a sports car is. And it just makes sense why everyone wants to, repeat this recipe, because there's no reason to change it. This is what a sports car should be. Just cruising around. It's like $3 grand. I put my foot down and man, it just giddy up and then just shift, and then you can just cruise again. It's the best of both worlds. It's a city car, it's a track car. It does it all easy. I haven't had the chance to drive the PDK version of this car, but if it's anything like the rest of Volkswagen Group's dual clutch systems, then I bet you it's phenomenal. If you're doing research for these, stay away from the 2005s. They have a lot of issues. And then take some time and go on the forums and talk to some of the owners and get an idea of what problems to expect, what are the common issues to keep an eye out, because there's a lot of information on those forums. Thank you guys for checking out yet another episode of LJ's Garage. Be sure to hit that like button, the comment button, and subscribe button. I appreciate all the support I can get, and special thanks to Vince for letting me take this bad boy out for a spin.